thank you for coming. My name is Esther, and I'm the curator here at Union Hall. Union Hall has been around since 2019, so we're turning 5 this year, which is really exciting. So if you want to know more about Union Hall, check out our website, and please come to our anniversary party June 1st. So I want to introduce Kiera. Kiera's been our curator for To Offer to Leave and curated this really beautiful exhibition that you see here. And we have the pleasure tonight of just hearing a little more from Kiera about the exhibition and some details behind it. But before I do that, I just want to really quickly let you all know about our Rough Gems program, since this is an exhibition that's in our Rough Gems series. So Rough Gems is our flagship program, and it was created to give emerging curators an opportunity to curate their own exhibition with the full support of a beautiful gallery space, staff support, and financial support. And we're really proud to be one of the only nonprofits doing this work right now in Denver. But without further ado, I'll bring Kiera on a little bit to talk about the show.
Do I need to press anything, or is it just... Okay, I just hold this. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hi. Thank you for coming to the show. I'm Kiera. Before I dig into the specifics of the show, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of how this concept grew into me and how I came upon it. I think when we come into a concept, there's a lot of little details that come from way back when that really add a lot of context into how something came to be. And so I want to talk about that web and how I came to this place. And I think that all these little details are really important for this show specifically. So when I came upon the Rough Gems application, I was obviously drawn to the dark walls and how it creates a space of tenderness, a space of darkness that allows us to reach into our innermost realms of emotion. And so I started thinking about melancholia and how I feel melancholia quite a bit throughout my life. And it's a place that I hold dear, and I think a lot of people in general society, we don't talk a lot about sadness and the beautiful parts of sadness. For me, I have a little thing where I do like to feel a little sad sometimes, because I think it allows us to transform, to extend into our innermost realms of ourselves and really expand upon the things that make life beautiful and important. And it's very romantic and beautiful and nice. And so I wanted to speak a lot about melancholia, but I wanted to figure out a way that I could relate this to the general public and society and my peers. And so I started thinking about icons that were surrounding me, and that was the Swan. And I feel like every time I viewed a swan, I felt this admiration with such elegance and beauty and sophistication, and almost this separateness that was far from me, but also so close and intimate, something that was beyond my reach. And swans, in themselves, represent change and transformation, and I don't know, I'm just really drawn to them. They're very feminine and beautiful, and again, unobtainable. So I started to think about what relates to the swan, and I started thinking more about different stories that made me feel close and related to. And that's when I started thinking more about Swan Lake as the ballet, and Odette and her story, as well as Ophelia's story in Hamlet. So Swan Lake, if you don't know, if you haven't seen it, follows Odette, who is cursed by a sorcerer who turns her into, she's a swan by day and a beautiful woman by night. When a prince comes in and he is going hunting for the swans or whatever, he comes in at night, he sees her transform to this beautiful woman, he instantly falls in love. And she's like, hey, okay, cool, I don't want to be a swan. I would love to be a person all the time. And he's like, I'm going to save you, as most men do. And that's cool and chill. And he has a ball, and she's supposed to come to this ball. But the sorcerer gets in the way, and he creates an almost identical replica of her, and he falls for this identical replica. And she's like, excuse me, how do you not know it's me? Didn't we get to know each other? What the hell? So he comes back. She's now like a swan all of the time. And so she's a little, this isn't okay. And he's like, I want you. Like, I'm so sorry. And she dives into the lake. And he dives in after her. And they both come together in death. So very like sad romantic story. But also you feel for her because you're like, okay, why did this guy do this? Whatever. So then you get to Hamlet and Ophelia's story, which Ophelia started as, a young, really obedient woman of her time. She listened to her dad. She did everything that she was supposed to do. Actually, when you first meet Ophelia in the story of Hamlet, everything that she says is in response to other people. So you never really see her take any agency over her life. And anytime that she does talk, it's kind of talked over, which I think a lot of women identify with that sometimes. And so sorry, I'm a little nervous. But she ends up, Hamlet pursues her a little bit. She asks her dad what to do, and he's like, don't feed into his romances. Everything's let me handle this. And then Hamlet ends up going to her dad, and he's like, no, he's trying to use her as a pawn. And so everybody in her life is kind of using her as this way for power and obstruction. And her dad ends up dying, and and then she goes a little, she's in grief. She goes to Hamlet. Hamlet no longer wants her. And so she's suddenly without these obstacles or this sense of worthiness that she used to know. Suddenly she's free to, do what she wants. And she comes into this what we call this madness era. And she, I think, in my point of view, she is smart through this. She's personifying madness. And able to kind of articulate this in a very intentional way because suddenly people are listening to what she's saying because it is so out of this world. She's singing songs, she's talking about sexual affairs and things that just women just don't talk about. So she hands off these flowers as her like last appeal to the general public and like her society. And all of these flowers represent something. She's like, for you, like this thing, fennel, and fennel. And then at the end, she like also represents rosemary. And this is where my programming, if you guys heard about it or saw it, was a very beautiful performance. But this is where that titling came from, was Rosemary for Remembrance. So rosemary represents this act of, it like stands in for like an important date. So usually it's at weddings and funerals, and it's an act of remembrance. So this like foreshadows her death as she gives this away. And then she ends it with, Violet, there are no violets because my dad is dead and you killed him, pretty much. But then she releases into this water, and she ends up, you know, committing suicide and this final act of like endness. So when I was looking at these two stories, both of them end in this like very watery abyss, and I was just really drawn to this because when you think about water, especially in the marsh of the swamp, there's a lot of growth and new life and the sense of like peace. And when you look into the symbolism of water and the femininity of that, it, you know, is giving, it's holding, it's motherly. And to me, like when both of these characters are coming into this watery abyssness and, you know, they're taking this agency into their own hands and being like, I'm going to a place that feels like peace. And that is the water. It holds them in this very like transitional way that like transcends who they once were. So yeah, that's where that all came into. Hello. So now I'm going to go through the show a little bit. Hi, do you want to talk for me? So I started the show off with Abdicate here by Lindsay Smith Gustave, and if you don't know her work, then you should, because she is like absolutely marvelous and just a fountain of knowledge. She's so intentional in like everything she does. She's been studying swans for a few years, a while. And so when I had this conversation with her, I had originally proposed a swan that is like laying on its back with its neck out, like it had passed away, it's dead. And I was very brutal. It was like a harsh thing of like, this show, is like a romantic death, and so here's this dead swan. But we came together, she's like, I don't want to ship this, it's gonna break. And so we talked about this piece, and she's like, I want to make this swan that is very like nestled into itself, peaceful, longing, floating into this like iridescent water with embroidered hands holding these flowers. And she brought like such a beautiful remark to it, to where she was just thinking about how when Ophelia comes into the water, like the earth just holds her and like gives her this peace that she's like always been looking for, and this knowingness without wanting anything in return. And so that's like very much represented here. And I mean, it's like so beautiful. So, and then we have Arthur Williams made this like beautiful enclosure for the swan, and he's just like an amazing florist. Like watching him put it together, I was just in awe, and I was like, I just trust you with like all of my floral life dreams. He makes it really exciting to, I don't know, like something where like you don't know a craft very well and you just watch somebody who's an expert in it do it. It's just like such a gift. Okay, moving on. So if anybody wants to follow, I will be walking now. So then I came into this piece right here on your right by Robin Gammons called Bird Spiral. To me, this resonates like, this comes together in like the beginning of these stories. It's very youthful. It reminds me a lot of like my childhood and like the wanderings of like what life is when you're just young and you don't have all these like crushing things of, what life wants from you, and you're just like looking into the sky and you start to make like patterns out of like the clouds and the birds, and it just feels like this like peace before the storm. I think it also like, it's a spiral, and if you noticed, we're in a spiral here. So then we have Daphne Sweet, which this is the only figurative work in the entire show. That was very important to me because I think it represents like a modern woman stepping into the lives of these women, like through the swamp, and how I think she almost takes on like the swamp character herself as like a holding hand. But Daphne's work is obviously like so amazing and beautiful, and she works with this figure a lot, creating from like mythology, and works on like topics of heaven. And then we come into Agnes's work, and Agnes is here, so I'm going to let her talk a little bit about this piece. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't been very eloquent lately, so I'm going to read a little bit. But I think aesthetically, like this tension of the chain with the Russian olive branch ties into this idea of to offer or to leave. And my work lately is speaking to the complexity of life. And this Russian, does anybody know what a Russian olive tree is? Okay. It is an invasive species native to Asia, I believe, and it was brought to the Great Plains because it's very hardy, and it created windbreak for homesteads, and crops could grow. But like all invasive species, we now know that it doesn't really work here. It's killing a lot of the native plants. And so this invasive species kind of serves as a metaphor for humanity. And the chains reflect industry, capitalism, and other elements of what has led us to existence today. We find ourselves in constant conflict where it is quite impossible to make a truly altruistic decision. And in regards to the narratives of Odette and Ophelia, the stories of their lives are directed by so much of what is out of their control. It's sort of reflective of kind of how all of us exist. And we can talk about like patriarchy, politics, all those institutions that can be easily manipulated by bad behavior. And so we kind of all have to adapt as we see fit, whether or not it's good or bad.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to add to that because that was perfect. So next we have Drew Austin's beautiful video, Consume Me, which Drew Austin doesn't make a lot of video work, so it was really exciting to be able to approach him and, you know, kind of be like, would you be down to make this video and like kind of test out some different things and create like an environmental space. And I love this video because you're able to, you know, view it, walk away, come back, and like gain something else from it each time within the context. So you see this flower being pushed through the water and the waves of nature, and like I think it just adds to the context of like what Ophelia and Odette were going through, again, by like being constantly pushed and pulled each way. And then maybe like that peaceful shift that happened when they finally, you know, took things into their own hands in the way that they could. Okay. Then there's Lindsay Smith Gustave. Again, there's 3 pieces by her in the show because I love her. I love everyone on the show, but I do also love Lindsay. So Golden Rotten, which we have this like, again, beautifully embroidered rotting apple underneath this sheer fabric where there sits a fly. I think it just talks so much about like, you know, what's hidden beneath and like this beauty of life and changing and the cyclical transformation that happens when letting go, when letting the earth, you know, take its cue. Yeah. I'm breezing through this. Arthur Williams, again, amazing, 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 amazing. This is Conversations Amongst Dryads, which a lot of his work, you know, talks about the conversation between plant life and material object, which I think is like so apparent here. And this like the same kind of conversation that's happening with Agnes's work, where there is this tension, there is this pull of, you know, a rock and a hard place of what's growing and what's constricting and what's, you know, having like a breakthrough moment. Yeah, I could stare at this all day long. So, and he comes and replenishes it, and it's beautiful. Okay. I feel like very awkward now as we're like coming to the end. I'm like, I'm losing stamina. Anyway, so last piece here by Lindsay Smith Gustave. And this is called Offering, which is very exciting because it matches the title. And that was a happy accident. But, in case I didn't like mention it earlier, which I don't think I did, the title came from, so Ophelia directly translates to offer, like to give. And so just a simple narration of like how the show goes, to offer and then to leave. So yeah, this piece, Offering, again, beautiful, beautiful embroidery, I think gives like a very like simple, but gives like cues into like the narration of like this piece. You see like the flowing and the little cherry pit at the end as like this like giving point. But Guys, this is hard. I'm like still shaking. Okay, I'm just gonna close it out here. We lead to the spiral where we have Robin Gammons' Star Tessellation 2. It was really important to me when curating the show that this piece was solo. I was thinking a lot about color and how color comes together to create a narrative when I was organizing everything. So as you like move around the space, the majority of the work has blues, greens, yellows, and then little hints and pops of red as like an element of foreshadow to like what's to come. And then you get this like big red moment, which I'm calling just like a red death. It's very dramatic. It's very theatrical. I just wanted this like this overwhelm of redness, of darkness, but also like I feel like in a lot of film there's like this red and then there's like this white of like reawakening, and I wanted to kind of allude to that. And that's it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, I know this was kind of a happy accident with the layout that ended up being a spiral. And
Yes.
I was thinking a little bit about madness and as it pertains to the female characters and how people say like she's spiraling and things like that. So I just wanted to see like how you felt about, or how you felt like the exhibition addressed the concept of madness, and maybe talk a little bit about the like stigmatization and marginalization of how it relates to women, and if that is like what that symbolizes, or how you feel like it translates.
Yeah. So in Ophelia's story, obviously, like she starts becoming mad, and people just kind of erase her, but they also hear her more, but they like don't think about what she is speaking as logic, because I think in the language of what she was speaking pre-madness, it's like very patriarchal language. It's following the rules. It's talking when you're spoken to. And when she steps out of that, she's speaking in more of like this very feminine, poetic, like very versatile way of speaking, which I think, makes her seem a bit mad. But I think the show relates to that with a spiral. And I know, yeah, it was a happy accident. It was really exciting when that happened. But I think the act of like coming in and out, like as even like an audience member, a viewer, and being able to like spiral and like come in, because I think madness works a lot like that, where it's like, I'm okay, no I'm not. I'm okay, no I'm not. So yeah, I think it alludes to that, and how it's like, it's not, madness isn't really like a bad thing. It's just like a different perspective.
Well, I like how you've also kind of created this moment for people to have. It's almost like this moment you get to be with yourself. This like central part of the exhibition, which I also think very much links to like the works and the themes around the show. So
Thank you.
yeah. So with that, I guess we can open it up if you all have any questions that you want to ask Kiera, or any comments, or anything.
Okay, so I was trying to figure out Daphne's third piece over there, where it's like the lady from behind, and then there's like a beef seasoning packet there. Could you say anything on that? Do you know any?
That is a great question. Yeah, so that one's titled Sensitive Soul, and I think that really just connects a lot to like her work in general. I do think it's interesting. I think it adds like a very modern takeaway, I think. Like, I think it's like nice for us to step into this like very romantic period, but also like a good note to like step out and like bring us into like, okay, we're still in like the 21st century, and we're like feeling these feelings too. And so like this beef seasoning, we're like, oh, okay, I had ramen yesterday. Like,
Is Daphne vegetarian?
yes.
Interesting.
She is a vegetarian.
The cows, the
Yeah.
soul, like, don't eat meat, I don't know.
That's a good note. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? No?
Sounded
Yeah.
like you actually had kind of a unique experience as a curator in that you got to speak with artists before they created some of their works.
Yeah, so that's like not usually how this program works at all. I proposed like a ton of different works, all the same artists, but it was just, yeah, like some things fell through. And I think when you're talking to an artist passionately about an idea and they're like, you know what, I want to expand upon this in a different way, would you be okay? And then there's like obviously more visits with them and talks and conversation. But yeah, I was very blessed to be able to talk them through a piece and be able to work like intimately in that regard instead of picking and choosing works for an exhibition. It was, yeah, I'm very lucky.
Is that weird as a curator? Like,
It was,
boundaries that you feel like, am I crossing this? Or
yes.
how do you deal with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were a lot of like weird boundaries, I think. Just me like being super respectful of like an artist's path and like how they make their work, but making sure that it like still is aligning. So like can be an assertive person, ask my family, but I also cannot be in a lot of ways. And so it took a lot of like courage, I think, for me to be able to step into like more of a project manager role in that aspect and yeah, and be like, okay, I love this is great, I want to give you your space, but also this is still a show and I'm still curating it and I'm kind of in charge here. So yeah, I don't know. I dealt with it with a lot of like respect, but also courageousness and authority. Cool. Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Really quick, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors because we wouldn't be here without them, and that is Bonfi Stanton Foundation, Colorado Community Foundation, and the Andy Warhol Foundation, and Colorado Creative Industries. But also thank you for coming out. Feel free to hang out and chat. We might have a few drinks left, and thanks for seeing the show. I think tomorrow is closing day. So the
yoga.
last. And what?
Yoga.
And we have a yoga class tomorrow. What time?
10 a.m.
At 10 a.m. The yoga facilitator likes to create meditations that are in alignment with what's going on in the exhibition. So if you're ever interested in having that experience, we do that once a month. But thanks again for coming out.
Yeah, thank you.